The Katowice Neon Trail. The Katowice Neon Trail will be led by our guides, Ms. Barbara Zygmanska and Mr. Piotr Fuglewicz, authors of A Walking Guide of Katowice. On the Katowice Neon Trail, there are 7 miniatures. These include, among others, Zoo, Super Sam, or Pendant Mall. Mr. Piotr said, "It was the first big department store after the war. It was commissioned in 1948. A commodity, industrial products. There was no food section, as in today's department stores. It was newly built and burned to the ground after the war. A 4-story house opened with a huge celebration. The president of the city was cutting the ribbon. There was a ceremonial opening. It was a return to life in 1948, and everyone was happy. Back in 1962, right on the tide, the movement of beautifying the city through neon signs. PDT was very representative in the place of the city. The first neon sign was just a shortcut, 3 letters of PDT in a circle. In the 1970s, on the next wave of change, from this PDT shortcut, the name Pendant was hatched. It got its name. It was still a well-stocked merchandise store, industrial, with haberdashery. Together with changing the name, a new neon sign was made, and this neon was the most explosive neon in the whole street. Because on the one hand, he presented Kamichitz, our national hero, and on the other hand, a cannon from which there was an explosion, and they were spreading huge circles on this wall. It was a neon sign that used a lot of tubes and lights, what actually made a huge impression. And then this neon was still going through other evolutions, because then from this, wheels was the centrifugal. It made it like a merry-go-round. At the moment, Pendant lost a bit of importance, just as they lost shops on the street in connection with the creation of 2 large shopping centers. It's currently dealing in a second-hand clothing, the lecturer said. There is still a remnant of this department store, and the theater without a stage. If we go in, there once housed the Kunska Spieler Theater, which unfortunately has been separated. Currently, also there are 2 theaters at the top there. There is Part A Theater, and at the bottom, Theater Without a Scene, Andrzej Dopierała. They were reaching where entering a theater without a stage. We can see the footprints of where people were walking, and where the boxes were placed with your shoes in order. So it is still a remnant of that today. Going back to the Katowice Neon Trail, Mr. Piotr said, "The neon history is quite short, because as long as the neons have been present in Europe since the post-war years, and even more pre-war, although then there were more incandescent installations. In Poland up until 1956, which is when a breakthrough in the loosening of the commune, neon signs were absent at all. Private companies were not allowed to advertise specifically. There was a certain size of signs they might have had. However, when after 1956, still quite the uneven power decided that we should, however, try to impress Westerners, and especially citizens. Adopted at the turn of 1956 to 1957, first in Warsaw, then in other cities, a plan for neonization. Neon wasn't meant to be like it was in a normal country of advertising. It was meant to be a place that attracted people to a particular company. One of the most famous neon lights, the Moulin Rouge, which is a windmill that revolves in Paris, that's where you have to go. No, in our country the neon sign, as in the commune, performed this function. That was assigned to it, but it was created to beautify the city, which anyway, in the end, the worst was not, because these neons were considered together with the buildings, together with the entire urban layout. There was a planned structure of light spots of some longer sections on the street. It's just right for the appearance of the city, as it had its positive overtone. Today, some cities have already introduced regulations, and others will have to introduce it, because you can't live with it. Resolutions that do not allow for large-scale advertising on walls and frames. There was no such arbitrariness at the time, whereas neon lights were designed by outstanding artists, because not everything in the commune was very bad. Although most hungry, she was angry. Namely, there was a central institute of design, because in the real socialism was that everything was centralized. So there was a large, several hundred-person central institute of design, which among others, it designed porcelain, it designed the furniture, and initially started also to define the assumptions for the production of neon signs. This furniture and porcelain today, they reach very high prices. This design at the time was a really great level. According to a plan that the butcher was assigned a red one, a florist a green one, and a clothing store a blue or purple one. It was detailed. On the one hand, you can laugh that it is absolutely absurd centralization, but on the other hand, it caused where the marshals, where the 3rd of May in Katowice had its uniform word. These neon lights had letters of a certain size. The cutoff was partially defined of these letters, although, on the other hand, in the 1960s there were a lot of these fancy neon signs. Because it was such a time that everything had to be controlled, these neon signs were increasingly overlapped with controls. After all, this is not a joke. In 1969, in order to be able to place a neon sign somewhere, you had to get a positive approval and permission from the district architect, the owner of the building, its designer, and conservator of monuments. If the building was a monument, the Fine Arts Commission, electrical designer, designer of the constructor, technical manager, contractor of the Municipal Department of Architecture, and a specialized commission at the City Hall. Not until it gathered all the signatures on the circuit board were you allowed to build a neon. However, you need the embellishment of this grey reality caused, that the neon lights appeared a lot. First, of course, in Warsaw. The thing started around 1956, but already in 1959, the Polish film Chronicle criticized the pace of Warsaw's development for the model of Katowice. In fact, Katowice was a quiet city. The rich, they had the main street on Trzeciego Maja Street. Was not too long, and it had a lot of important stores. So at each of these stores there was an important neon sign, or a nice neon sign. At the turn of the 1950s and 1960s, Katowice has become the capital of the Polish neon. The lecturer said, "We invite you to a trip to the unknown somewhere in Europe. Fluorescent lamps, commercials, streams of light. This is Katowice, the best lit Polish city. The only thing we're not ashamed of in this regard." The fathers of Katowice made a real neon revolution. Watch and learn. Fathers of the dark, Warsaw. Gloomy Krakow and the dark Poznań. This is what all of our cities should look like. Mr. Piotr said, "Neons have a future because they're so vintage. Right now, LED technologies of a different kind, allow for absolutely easier creation of different effects. On the other hand, neon signs have this charm, something so dignified, and by that neon they are returning. And in Katowice they are also returning neon memory, because a special trail is dedicated to them." The lecturer said, "I encourage you to take a walk along the trail of Katowice neon." That's it for this episode. Thank you to our guests. I'll talk to you soon. This project is funded by government budgets. The podcasts have been read by Braden Buddy.